Let's get started. I have absolutely nothing to say before this video begins. I have no snarky comment, no snide remark, no witty comment, but I will say one thing. I'm not a historian, right? The people we're going to talk about today died hundreds of years ago. Well, two of the three people that we're going to talk about died hundreds of years ago, right? Everything that I'm about to talk about, to my knowledge, is fact. I've scoured dozens of different news articles and news stories. I've read old newspaper clippings about the first guy we're going to talk about and different Reddits and stuff like that. And I've kind of culminated different pieces of evidence because a lot of them are conflicting. And I've kind of pieced together what is fact, because there are a lot of different things that try to exaggerate what these people do to kind of increase their infamy. But that's not what I'm here for. I'm here to give you guys the facts on these people, who they are, what they did, and stuff like that. And of course, with these people being as old as they are and their cases being as old as they are, I'm going to get some things wrong. So if you are a historian or you know something about these people that I'm about to talk about that I straight up lied about, I just didn't tell the fucking truth without me knowing, obviously. No, I lied to your face on purpose because fuck you. Mistold a story like I got some details wrong that were really crucial to the story that I'm telling, or three, just completely left out a prominent piece of evidence that really details who these people are. Please let me know down in the comments below, and I'll make sure other people, you know, read your comment, because we need to get knowledge out there. That's the whole point of this channel, is to get knowledge about these kinds of things out there, you know. Fucking oh my god, I'm killing it. So yeah, if there's something that I leave out or something that I completely misspoke on, let me know down in the comments below. I'll be more than happy to share that information with everyone else. So with that being said, let's get on to the first person, who is nuts. So the first person we're going to talk about today had a birth name of Herman Webster Mudgett. Then he changed his name to Henry Howard Holmes, Triple H's. You might know him as H.H. Holmes. H.H. Holmes is widely regarded as the United States' first prominent serial killer, who did most of his killings on the south side of Chicago on the corner of Wallace Street and 63rd Street. 63rd. We're not from 63rd. I'm not from 63rd. I have no affiliation with 63rd Street or 64th or 65th. Never mind. So H.H. Holmes had an entire criminal history. He was convicted and spent time in prison for insurance fraud because he tried to defraud a major insurance company back in the day. So he spent some time in prison for that, but we're not going to be talking about his past crimes. We're going to talk about the thing that everyone knows him for, which is literally building a 3-story hotel with 60 to 100 rooms of torture. And what I mean by torture is quite literally just torture. So I don't typically talk about the backstories of the people that I talk about because sometimes they're not crucial to the things that they did. But in this case, it is extremely vital because it pieces together how exactly he was able to pull all of this off. So H.H. Holmes was actually extremely fashionable, which means he dressed like a proper businessman, especially back in the 1860s, 1870s, 1880s, late 1800s. When he lived, he was extremely fashionable. He was also extremely charismatic. Everyone loved him. When he worked in a store across from the place where he would eventually build his hotel, everyone loved him. Everyone came in to see him. And also, he was extremely smart. And if you're asking exactly how charismatic Holmes was, he was married to 3 different women at the same time without either one of them knowing. Not dating, married. I'm just gonna leave that information there to just simmer. So in 1887, he bought the lot directly across from the shop that he worked at, and he planned to build a 3-story apartment building complete with both apartments and shops. And that was there to really bring in people from the outside that were really trying to make a living in Chicago, because during this time, Chicago is not the windy city that we know and love today. It was just a up-and-coming city like New York back in the 1850s and the 1840s. It was really on the up and coming. To really broadcast how real this was and that this was a real thing, people actually died here. I'm going to take you guys actually to exactly the place where his castle or his shops or his apartment complex was back in the day. So as we read before, it was on the corner of Wallace Street and 63rd Street. Now it is called 611th West on 63rd Street. And if you zoom in on Chicago, and then specifically Inglewood, the pin takes us to the post office. But if you read multiple articles, it is not the post office right here. It's actually right here. This empty lot was exactly where the hotel stood. And if you take your person, drop them down right here, this is where H.H. Holmes's hotel used to stand. It was demolished very shortly after he was found out in 1894, but this is exactly where his house of horrors were. Also, a little side note, whoever did this, that is beautiful. I love that. Love all, trust none. I would love to get that tattooed. So if you see a new tattoo on my fucking foreskin, you know where I got the idea from. So the castle, I'm going to refer to it as the castle from now on. It was completed in 1892. And in 1894, police were already busting in the doors of this place and finding all of its intricate hallways and rooms and traps and all that kind of stuff, which means that for 2 years, H.H. Holmes was terrorizing the south side of Chicago. For 2 years, he had an entire apartment complex, castle, posing as a fucking hotel for people on the outside coming in for the first time and staying there at a chance for a better life, and they were just disappearing. People were just disappearing left and right. So here is a diagram of the second floor of the Holmes Castle. Now usually I just kind of put it on the screen and I talk over it, but I feel like it's really important for me to really point out the different types of things that he had in here and really kind of explain things that aren't even on the floor plans that the police had drawn when they originally went in. So for example, here we have an asphyxiation chamber. If you are unaware of what asphyxiation means, it means to suffocate. It means you have no air to breathe. So there was an entire room that was air sealed tight, and he had installed a vacuum to suck the air out, and it suffocated people inside. If you can pay attention to right here, this one says the mysterious closed room. So I'm not totally sure what that means, because according to the reports, the mysterious closed room was a room with no doors. So I'm not exactly entirely sure how they were aware that was there without, unless, they were hyper vigilant and knew like there's an area here, we can't get in. I'm not sure if they knocked the wall down or anything like that. There is no police report that I found that shows them going into the room and describing what was in it. From what I know and what I've read, it just seems like there was a space that just wasn't explored, or it was just a completely empty room with no doors leading in or out of it. I don't really know. And if you look all around here, like bathroom with hidden stairs to the basement, sealed room, shoot from roof to basement, secret hiding place and stuff like that, this was all for H.H. Holmes. It's reported that in his bedroom where he actually stayed, in his bathroom, he had a secret trap door that led down to a cubicle with no windows that was also attached to a chute. That chute led down to the basement, and according to reports, he would take people from either the asphyxiation chamber, or like there was rooms that he had just gas hooked up to it, and he would gas people in their sleep or even when they're alive and asphyxiate them that way and just poisoning the shit out of them, take them up to his room and do untold things to them, and then throw their body parts down the chute down to the basement, which is probably the worst basement that you could think of. Without getting into too much details before I actually get down into talking about the basement, it was, according to police reports and different news outlets at the time, it was the worst thing they have seen in Chicago at the time. And it is still infamous in Chicago, with that storyline being headed multiple times throughout history. I'm not sure if it's anytime recently, but multiple times throughout history, they have referred to H.H. Holmes' basement, which, as we get to later, you'll find out exactly why. Oh, also, there is a 5-door room. I don't know why, but there was 5 doors in one room. Maybe to confuse people, throw people off, really scare them and think that they were going insane. I don't really know the psychology behind that, but there was a room with 5 doors. And if you're wondering where and how accurate the drawing is that I just showed to you, which is what most people refer to when talking about H.H. Holmes's castle, this is an actual newspaper clipping from back in the 1800s when they first discovered what was happening and first reporting on H.H. Holmes's castle. This is an artist rendition of actually what it was looking like inside, which, if you notice, this is exactly the same as the clip I just showed you, except it's just twisted 180 degrees. And as you can see right here, this is an artist illustration of what the entirety of H.H. Holmes's castle looked like back in its heyday from 1892 to 1894. Like I said, this was an apartment complex. This was the hub for people coming into Chicago trying to make it big. This is where they lived at. They lived in this building. So people were living here. People were just disappearing left and right, and he would just fill the rooms back up to make it look like nothing happened. And this was back in 1890s, and these were obviously people from outside of Chicago where no one really knew where they were. So if they went missing, no one would really care because no one knew that they were missing. Like I said, 1890s, in a place that they have never been before. So that's how I think H.H. Holmes was able to get away with this for as long as he did. Yes, less than 2 years isn't as long as many serial killers, but one, you know, people still died here. He still killed quite a lot of people. And two, the sheer madness and the sheer size of his entire scheme was amazing. In fact, it was reported that he hired and fired architects, designers, and builders left and right within months of each other, just so no one could really pick up exactly what he was doing. Because like I said, he had walls with blowtorches built into them. He had asphyxiation chambers where people would suffocate to death. He had chambers that would lock and you couldn't get out, and it was lined with steel and lead so no one could hear you scream, and you'd be stuck there for days or weeks or even months until you starved to death, and then he would come in and get you. And not to mention every single place where there was, you know, a stairwell leading down to the basement, or like one of the rooms, like the asphyxiation room for example, they all had alarms on them that would ring a bell in H.H. Holmes's room. So he knew exactly where people were at all times in his hotel. And if he caught you trying to get down to the basement, or if he heard an alarm in a place where, you know, there was access to the basement or access to a part of the home that you weren't allowed to be, he would just straight up kidnap you and kill you. Again, I'm not condoning what he did, but this was genius. Like, everything was so well thought out and planned that he is an evil genius, like an actual, not fucking Dr. Evil genius. He was an actual evil genius that killed people with intricate traps and alarms and chutes and places that you could go in and just get blowtorched and asphyxiated and suffocated until you died. Like, it's just an intricate piece of architecture made specifically to kill people. And it's crazy to me how massive this was and how long he was able to go for it. It's just insane that all of this took place back in 1890, yet he got away with all of this. It's just crazy to me. He's just crazy to me. Not in a good way. Not in a good way, but holy fuck. And when talking about the basement, and which is, according to reporters and police reports, one of the most horrendous things that they've ever seen in a serial killer case at that time, and is still regarded as one of the most horrendous things that a serial killer has done in American history. You know, it's on par with Ted Bundy, it's on par with John Wayne Gacy and stuff like that. The things that he did in this basement were just straight up crimes against humanity, because sometimes he would take alive people down here and skin them alive. Sometimes he would just leave you there hanging for days, weeks, months on end until you died. He would drill a hole in your skull and just hang you there by your skull. Again, these are all speculations. I can't prove nor disprove what happened here. But what is known is that there were multiple bodies that were found down here, and multiple torture tools and stuff like that, like a stretching rack. If you don't know what a stretching rack is, it's where they tie your hands and feet to ropes and you're stretched out like this on a flat wood board, and you're just stretched out. Things like that. It was without a doubt like a literal torture chamber. Like a literal torture chamber. Like, Remember that scene from The Mummy where Imhotep and his slaves are getting tortured? That's that. That is exactly what was happening down here to countless people over time. And the most interesting part about this whole thing to me is that H.H. Holmes did all of this atrocity right inside of his hotel. That is not what got him caught. That's not what got him executed either. What got him caught was he was still committing insurance fraud on the side. And during one of these scams, he made out with a lot of money, and he had a partner that he was working with. And Holmes promised him a bunch of money that Holmes didn't come through with because he's a scammer. So Holmes fled to Boston without paying his partner a dime. The partner gets pissed off, tells the police that H.H. Holmes went to Boston. The police go to Boston, grab Holmes for insurance fraud, bring him back to Chicago. Holmes then murders his partner somehow, and he gets tried and executed for that murder. Not for the dozens or hundreds of murders that took place in his apartment complex. They didn't even know about that yet. It was an insurance scam that killed him. He then tried to appeal his murder case. Why? And then they obviously threw that out and then hung him on May 7th, 1896. And just before he was hanged, it's hanged, not hung. I learned that like last year, I think. That blew my fucking mind. His last words were, "I was born with the devil in me. I could not help the fact that I was a murderer, no more than the poet can help the inspiration to sing." There are a lot of reports about an H.H. Holmes kind of curse or bad omen, because when he was hung and his neck snapped, there was thunder that struck, or lightning that struck and caused thunder a couple miles away. But if you look up in the sky, it was a beautiful spring day, beautiful day. And apparently he stayed alive for 15 minutes after his neck snapped. And other people are also saying that he was claiming to be Jack the Ripper the entire time before he was hung. I don't know what else to say, but so that was the story of H.H. Holmes, and we're not even done yet. That was so long. I didn't expect it to go that long, but it is what it is. And the next person we're going to talk about, you may not know her name, but you know exactly what she did, because what she did was so fucking atrocious that it is still talked about 500 years after she died. So this is another person that the backstory is extremely vital to why she did what she did. So I'm going to include the backstory, but I'm going to try and keep it short, but there's a lot of information here, so it might drag on a little longer than you might like. Just feel free to skip forward in the video. So Elizabeth Bathory was born on August 7th, 1560 to a noble and wealthy family all the way in Hungary. So there was actually a paper written about her back in 2018 by the University of Poland that said that at the age of 4 and 5, she was already suffering from epileptic seizures, violent mood swings, and extremely excessive migraine headaches. So although she was born into a wealthy family that controlled majority of Transylvania, which is nowadays Romania, she was plagued by poor health, and she was also surrounded by violence at a very young age, because she saw her very first execution when she was only 6 years old. And I said the University of Poland, I meant the Poland University of Lodz. Not pronouncing that right, I'm sorry, but those are characters that are not in English, and I'm a stupid American, so I apologize. At the age of 13, she was already engaged to an 18-year-old named Count Ferenc Nadasdy from another influential and noble Hungarian family, and 2 years later, they got married, and eventually they had 4 different kids. When they moved to Sarvar, I am butchering these fucking names, I am so sorry, but they eventually moved to Sarvar in West Hungary, where Nadasdy, God, I'm so fucking stupid, he taught her in the ways of torturing a human being. That's not something I would teach my wife, but hey, whatever floats your boat, I guess. What the fuck? To make his wife happy, he covered a servant girl in honey and then restrained her to a table and let insects eat her over time. And eventually she was introduced by her auntie, or her aunt for the layman, to orgies and a shadowy circle group of people considered sorcerers, witches, and alchemists. Brother, I am fucking butchering the shit out of this. But Bathory moved to another castle after her husband died in 1604, and this castle is called Countess Castle. Fuck, dude, I am so stupid. But she moved to this castle in 1604, and tales of what she did to her servants, because she was brought up and taught the ways of torture and introduced to all of this kind of evil things that were happening. These tales of what she would do had spread to the people of this town, and they were hiding their daughters from going to serve her, right? Because she was always looking for servants because she killed them. And these servants weren't just, you know, the servants that you see in movies, like old decrepit men kind of just serving because they are like the lowest class that there was in that era. There were actually they were peasants, but there were young women, like teenage or even sometimes children. And she believed that bathing in their blood would grant her immortality and eternal youth. So she would fill entire bathtubs with blood of these innocent young girls, and she would bathe in it because she thoroughly believed that this ritual of some sort would grant immortality and eternal youth and beauty. So she did this to people of lower classes because it wasn't really illegal for a noble person to do this. Again, this is back in the 1560s, a very long time ago, and the caste system in terms of, you know, hierarchy, or if the caste system is even the thing, like monarchy, like, I guess, I don't know. She was a noble person, and she was killing peasants, which wasn't really illegal, but it wasn't really legal. It was kind of like a blurred line in between. But where things really started to get dicey is that she started killing people of noble blood, and that is where people actually stepped in and started investigating exactly what she was doing to these people. So I'm just going to read this paragraph word for word explaining what she did to these poor girls. According to contemporary reports and the stories told long after, Elizabeth Bathory tortured girls and young women in unspeakable ways. She allegedly burned her victims with hot irons, beat them to death with clubs, stuck needles under their fingernails, poured ice over their bodies and left them to freeze to death outside in the cold, covered them in honey so that bugs could feast on their exposed skin, sewed their lips together, and bit off chunks of flesh from their breasts and faces. Witnesses claim that Bathory's favorite method of torture was using scissors to mutilate her victims' bodies and faces. She supposedly used the instrument to cut off their hands, noses, and genitals, sometimes even used scissors to slice open the skin between her victims' fingers. And remember the thing that I said about her bathing in other people's blood, or the blood of young women? So that is highly speculated to be untrue, but her nickname is the Blood Countess for this reason, because of this famous accusation. But according to Sci-Fi, yes, exactly who you're thinking of. That exact news network thing. That's who's reporting this. Says that these claims never really came to light until hundreds of years after she was dead. So it's very highly unlikely that these things actually happened, since no one that was alive at the time were making these claims. And finally, in 1610, which is about 6 years after she moved to the town in which I cannot pronounce, the King of Hungary launched an investigation into why there were so many missing persons in this specific town, and they found all of these bodies inside of her castle. She was arrested and imprisoned inside of the castle that she was committing all these acts in for the murder of 80 young girls. But according to witnesses and different testimonies from different people, she murdered well over 500 different people during her 6-year stint there in that town. But yet, giving her nobility and the fact that they can't really tie the noblemen's deaths to her. She could never be really convicted of her crimes. Instead, 4 of her servants were convicted in her place, and she was just kind of left in prison there, and she finally died in 1614 at the age of 54. I remember the first time I ever heard of Elizabeth Bathory was from a movie that was actually kind of terrifying when I was a kid. That was called Stay Alive. I highly recommend that movie. I don't remember if it's like an actual good movie or if it's a good bad movie, but that movie still sticks with me to this day. Like certain scenes, it's a pretty cool concept, and I remember hearing this name Elizabeth Bathory a lot, and she's referenced quite a lot in that movie. So I highly suggest you guys go watch that movie. Again, it's called Stay Alive, and I remember that there were actual advertisements for this movie on the fucking radio, where there are no movie advertisements ever, but there was one for Stay Alive. So if you guys want to watch a good bad horror movie that will stick with you and it's kind of memorable, go watch it. If not, we're gonna move on to the next person and last person, and probably the, in my opinion, fucking worst person that is on this planet right now, and his name goes by the name of Peter Scully. I have a little bit of a disclaimer about Peter Scully. I'm going to recite a lot of what I know about him from my memory, because I have been researching Peter Scully since his name came to be in 2015. So the reason I have to talk about this guy in particular from memory is because the references that I want to use, that are ones that I know that are not watered down, and the ones that I originally used to learn about this case are long gone. They are discussion boards, Reddit threads from Reddits that don't even fucking exist anymore. The things that I want to talk about with this guy, they're just covered up. I don't want to say covered up. They're watered down. I feel like the media is unintentionally not playing this guy to what he actually is, which is a fucking monster. If you are unaware, Peter Scully had a production company, if you could fucking call it that, called No Limits Fund, which dealt primarily in hardcore child, you know, and hardcore is unsimulated pain and torture and stuff like that. And so No Limits Fund really delved into that kind of realm with with children, which is what made Peter Scully so infamous, was his No Limits Fund. But it was one video in particular that really piqued my interest, because it was, for a certain point in time, regarded as an internet urban legend. So I was there doing, you know, what I do right now, like researching the darkest parts of the internet, back in 2012, 2013, back when everyone thought that his video was an urban myth. No one could think that this thing could exist because of how fucking evil it was, and just exactly what was happening in the video. There were descriptions of the video that when I was reading it, I was like, there's no fucking way that that could happen in a video to this kind of person. There's absolutely zero way. So I was like, yeah, this thing is an urban myth, and these guys are just kind of blowing smoke up people's asses to try and fuel the fire of this urban myth. And when I tell you that the reason why people thought it was an urban myth was because of how fucking evil that this dude was and what he was doing to these people. When I was reading the descriptions for these videos, and I was kind of investigating exactly if this thing is real, if it's not, I kind of played it off, and I was like, okay, there's absolutely zero way that this could be real. And then in 2015, Peter Scully was arrested, and Interpol comes out and says, nope, this is real, this is 100% real. And the reports that I read, which are, you know, of course they're censored, and I don't want to know any fucking details, but about them describing the parts of the videos that were like the evilness of the video. Everything was real. Everything that these people on the internet were saying was real. So I've known about Peter Scully for a while. So I'm sorry for going off on a long tangent about this fucking evil motherfucker, but I'm gonna tell you from memory who he was, how he was able to pull off what he did, and his life of crime, because there was way more to Peter Scully than just DD. So without further ado, we're gonna talk about this fucking piece of shit. Peter was born in Melbourne, Australia in 1963, and he had a very normal life. There was nothing outwardly that showed that he had these evil tendencies. He even got married and had 2 kids. Somewhere along the way, he drove off the path and became a career criminal, and he started off by defrauding multiple companies for $2.68 million. He also got a Malaysian girlfriend named Ling, and he would pimp her out to different parties across Australia. So in 2009, what I'm assuming is the Australian equivalent to the IRS, or the American, they get you if you do tax fraud, exactly what Peter was doing. He fled Australia for the Philippines in 2009, and that's where he actually started building his empire of dark and depraved shit. So if you didn't know this, the Philippines is a hub for pedophiles and crimes against children. I'm not sure exactly why it's the Philippines, but that's just the way that it is right now. And from there, he started his production company called No Limits Fun. Like I said, was a hardcore CP driven thing, and it wasn't really a production company. It was more of a dark web website called No Limits Fun. So how he would get his victims, which, may I remind you, were fucking children, was he would approach impoverished families with his 2 Filipina girlfriends, and he would promise them that he would take care of the children and give them food, give them money, and take care of them. And the parents, you know, thinking that this was a Australian man who obviously can take care of himself and has 2 Filipina girlfriends who look nice enough, right? They would just let their children go with Peter, because but from their eyes, they would think a life with a man who is saying that he can take care of the kids better than I can in this impoverished neighborhood, that's way better. You know, just, you know, take the kids. It's fine, because I want them to have a better life. That was what their mindset was. So, and from there, he would take these kids to a house and he would torture them. He would rape them. He would do unspeakable things to them. And if you didn't know, the movie or the fucking film or whatever, DD features an 18-month-old child that was also tortured and raped, and all these kinds of fucked up shit happening to this person or this baby. And Peter Scully even strangled an 11-year-old and buried her under the house. I don't remember, and from the research that I've done on that I could right now, I don't know what happened to the other bodies of the victims. I'm assuming they were either buried off-site or they were buried underneath the house as well. I'm not sure, but that's just what I speculated to be. And if you're wondering why Peter would do these kinds of things to kids, I really can't give you a straight answer. I've been studying him for the better part of 8 years now, and I still can't figure it out. The best answer that I can give you is that his family says that he is driven by money, and he would charge upwards of 10,000 American dollars per view of these videos. So I'm assuming he's driven completely by money. He doesn't care what he has to do. He doesn't care that he's hurting other people. He doesn't care that he's going to hell. He doesn't give a fuck. He just wants his money. So in 2015, he was caught and he was tried, and there was an outstanding amount of evidence against him in the form of cameras, in the form of cassette tapes, in the form of the films, in the form of, like, they had a chain, like an actual chain that he used in one of the videos. They had it. And mysteriously, on the day of the trial, there was a massive fire that wiped out the entire evidence room, and it cleared out all the evidence against Peter Scully. But there was still more than enough evidence to put him away for life. So the reason there was still so much evidence against Peter after all this shit happened, after everything burned to the ground, is because people saw the videos and came forward. Not like random people in the dark web. Those fucking pussies would never come out. But it's the lawyers that had to watch it to know what they were dealing with, because they're prosecutors. You know, they need to know all of the ins and outs of this case. So when they watched the videos, there was one reporter by the name of Ruby Monologue, and she watched it. She said it is the most devastating thing she has ever seen in her life and will ever see in her life. She cried when she watched it. She cried when she described it, and she cries every night when she thinks about it, because she has severe post-traumatic stress disorder from watching that film. Scully claimed to be remorseful in court, but he pleaded not guilty to his crimes, and what that did was it forced 10 of his victims to get onto the stand to testify against him. I forgot to mention, the reason he was caught was 2 of his victims escaped and found the police and reported it to the police. But that wasn't before, you know, the FBI was tracking that DD was a thing, that it existed. They were tracking No Limits Fund and all this kind of stuff. But it was the 2 victims that had escaped that actually led to the arrest of Peter Scully. I forgot to mention that part. I am sorry. So that was the case of Peter Scully in a very small nutshell. I apologize that it wasn't as much information as even I hoped it would be. Like I said, all the references that I had are gone now. They don't exist. But I really wish they were, because they had really, really good information on them. But also, I really dislike talking about crimes against children. It's a huge soft spot for me. So I just really wanted people to know about Peter, what he did, so that it really brings a light to a side of the internet that people really don't talk about, and it needs to be talked about more, because it is a fucking massive problem. But yeah, those are 3 of the more gruesome people, or the most unfathomably evil people in the history of this earth. And I'm hoping to make this a series, because there are a lot of evil people out there. You know how some people have like evil people but they did some good things, or evil people but they had good intentions. No, like, this is just evil people because they're evil. I hope you enjoyed this video. I really enjoyed making it for you, with the exception of the last part, but it needs to be done. And I really look forward to making it a series, and hopefully I'll see you guys next week. Until then, have a good day, and I'll catch you later. Bye.